division of fire station per capita?
But there's no requirement under
Oh,
state.
yeah, you drop below certain standards
But-
and they cut off your homeowner's insurance.
Well, there is, now that's not federal law, that's the insurance company. Now, the insurance companies look at the level of risk, which is why we're looking at several different options. Now, if we have 12 fully staffed stations again, which is one of the options, that's gonna save the city by contracting. Now, we get the same level of service, the same quality of service. We actually get to reopen 2 stations, and on top of that, that's the most expensive option we're looking at. The city is still saving $7 million a year by going to the contracted service as opposed to the current model, which, you know, they retire at 50, and then we have to pay their pensions for the remainder of their lives. So it's a different model. It's a model that other places, to be perfectly honest, California is kind of the oddball, because if you go to other parts of the country, you see very different models. California has this very strict system where you have to have these certain levels and so forth. A lot of other parts of the country, they have volunteer fire departments.
Is that inclusive of paying the leases on those fire stations?
What leases?
That
We own the
savings?
fire station.
Every one of them?
There's a couple, well, there's the Palm and Kendall is a Melrose, so that is actually paid for out of your property tax. You get a line item in your property tax for that. There's, I think, the station by the Orange Show, I think, is actually owned by the Orange Show.
Yes.
Yeah. The balance, the vast majority of our stations are city-owned facilities.
But
And does it-
when this goes, and if we go with a contract, the existing firemen, the staff, many of those are gonna retire, so that obligation to them to provide those services are gonna grow. Does this consider that amount of growth, that historical well that we have?
They're already entitled to retirement.
I know,
And
but
the problem is we're hemorrhaging, they're leaving already. I mean, it's already, a lot of them are already leaving. That's the problem we have, is that because we're in this spiral downward, we're losing fire personnel. That means we're having to pay more overtime. Where it's very difficult to recruit now because of the unstable environment that exists. I'll be honest, I'm not demonizing our fire professionals. I think it's an awful position for them to be in too, and I feel for them, because it's very difficult to work in a department where you don't know from one day to the next if you're even going to have a job next month. And so what we did is, with this contractor, we said, the first thing we want you to do is offer the first jobs to our existing personnel. They get the first opportunity to say yes or no. So we aren't trying to, you know, the intent is to restructure and get ourselves to a stable structure that allows us to continue to provide the level of service that we need in this city, to ensure we have adequate response times, which we don't have now. We had to cut 2 stations, and we probably will have to cut more unless we restructure the way we provide that service and reduce those costs. So we've got plenty of questions now, so I'm gonna shut up. Okay, in the back.
I want to know, is everything here going to be considered at the meeting?
This
And
is the
how
plan.
in-depth is this, as far as the fire station is concerned?
What's that?
Are they considering what they're going to do with the fire station in this?
Yes. Well, what I
want to know is are we
Yeah,
talking about
this
something
doesn't
in the
go
future or
into
something now?
this doesn't go into the details of who we contract with, or all it does is it says the city, what we are trying to demonstrate to the court is that we have done our due diligence as a city. That we've gone out and we've explored the options. And based on the options, we authorized our city manager to go out and solicit, not to award contracts, but more or less it's kind of an RFP, not to award it though, but to more or less go out and get some bids and just find out. Ask CAL FIRE what they're willing to provide the service for, the county, Holton, Loma Linda, some of these private contractors, because the court obligates us to do that. We have to. Under the bankruptcy law, what the court is saying is, if we're going to impair $50 million in debt over here, you better go out and make sure that you turn over every rock possible, because it's unfair to tell them they aren't going to get paid, but everybody else is fine. We just aren't going to bother dealing with restructuring. So we have to look at everything. It's our obligation under bankruptcy.
The bottom line here, Henry, and this is for everybody, the bottom line, regardless of which way this goes, one vote. It's the vote of the council. Henry is but one vote.
Well, and this vote.
Yeah, but he
this
can
vote
take a
is
back.
not- This vote is not to, the vote that you guys are making tomorrow is not to contract out fire.
No.
It is to.
Accept this proposal.
It is to accept this proposal, and then contracting fire out would have to be another vote, another discussion. Raising this tax or doing this would all have to be other discussions. And that was my point. What if none of this gets approved?
They would become part of the county.
Yeah.
Essentially, that's what happens. The city.
Well, but
just-
that's untreaded waters. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's the problem. This hasn't happened in the history of the U.S. where a city this size has been thrown out.
Yeah, not a city
bankruptcy
this
court.
size. Other
You know,
cities have disincorporated.
Yeah, well, and even a county seat. So, you know, I mean, my issue, and like I expressed yesterday at the strategic planning meeting, is that, in my opinion, I'm gonna be straight up honest with you, I don't think Judge Jury should accept this. I really don't, because the fact that too much is riding on voter approved. I mean, your minimum on your table 2 is $22 million of money. That's voter approved. So the voters shut down all that. That's $22 million of revenue the city is anticipating to sustain that they're not going to get. And the ideas of the contracting. So I mean, essentially, the bulk of this is, okay, we want voters to say yes, that they want to give more money out of their pocket for taxes. We want voters to say yes to give them more money out for services, because contract companies, their first and foremost is bottom line, profit. That's what they're in for. They're not into, hey, you know what, let's do this the best job to make it look the greatest for the city. They want to actually say, okay, how can we go in and do it for the cheapest, get in, get out, and be done? You know, we have that situation right now with our camera inspection crew, okay? In the contract, it states if they have a higher paying contract on a job duty, they leave our city and they go do that contract and they come back. You know, and that's the problem, is they're looking at what's going to be beneficial to their bottom line. So, you know what?
And to be fair.
Well, hold on, because the fact that,
goes to contract.
you know, and
City writes terrible contract.
yeah, and the city has not,
Junk.
you know, has not shown good faith on writing good contracts, like you said. Come on, you know, we have current contracts. You're saying the city's going to provide a 10-year contract, okay, and this is what's going to happen. We have current contracts that they're coming back left and right for change orders. We have one that's on the 6th and 7th Amendment. What's to stop that bleeding right there? It isn't. When you go into refuse, that's my concern. You're taking a department, integrated waste, and we haven't touched on this, that has shown that they are in the black. They've shown. They provide a franchise fee to the city of $2.2 million every year. That money goes from that department into the general fund. Okay. Why? What is the purpose of contracting it out? Everybody says, oh, well, other agencies do it. And it's just like, you know what? If we're going to jump off the hill to follow other agencies, why? You know, if we were going to do that, heck, we should have done that to say, hey, these other agencies aren't going into bankruptcy. Let's follow their model beforehand.
Well, and let me just, now here's the analysis that was made. Now, in terms of waste, now if we wanted to, in addition to fire, we're looking at contracting out solid waste, which is done. We're one of the few cities in Southern California that still has our own refuse department that's employed by the city. And I'll be honest, I don't believe government provides the best quality of service. I think it's, you know, we have plenty of examples around California now. We're really the odd one out now. And you see our trash trucks.
I work in Rancho, I see Boris trucks all over the place every day.
I've been down to the yard. We have refuse trucks that are waiting for parts. They're all different makes. Most of them have far exceeded their useful life. They're fully depreciated. We'd be lucky to get scrap for them if we sold them off tomorrow. So we have a very substandard fleet. Our fleet right now is in dismal condition. We have to start investing in renewing our fleet, and we just don't have the money. So, I understand the complaint, but doing nothing is really not an option here. And so, my pushback is, and I completely understand the frustration, is if there's an alternative, if there are alternatives, we need to identify those. But doing nothing, and what happened in Stockton, the same thing happened. Their plan included some voter-approved tax measures. That was part of their plan. It's not unusual. That's the way these things, and the bankruptcy court understands that, we live in a democracy, folks. It'd be nice if we had a bunch of little dictators, perhaps, down at City Hall that could just say, thou shalt pay more in taxes and you will do it and that will be done. But it doesn't work that way. Our system of government is one that assumes that, we have a responsibility as voters and as members of this community to step up and, if necessary, do what's necessary to ensure we're solvent, that we can pay for the services that we all need to demand. Otherwise, we either cut services or we cease to exist as a city. I mean, it's a demonstration as to whether or not we're even capable of functioning as a city if we aren't even willing to pay for the services that we demand, or otherwise cut those services. Now, we don't want to pay for them. Then the other side of the coin is, well, then, do we cut them, or do we improve them? Do we streamline them? Do we make them more efficient? And how do we do that? So this is the challenge we're facing.
Is the waste department is a revenue earning department.
Yeah, what will happen?
Let me finish.
Sure.
The money that they make, are they allowed to reinvest that money into themselves so they can upgrade and keep their trucks at a reasonable rate?
Well, it's an enterprise fund, yes. So the money that goes in, the trash cans that you have. No, what happens, the refuse is an enterprise fund. So the money that comes in has to be, those are restricted funds now. They're restricted funds.
That's the issue.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of playing fast and loose with restricted funds. There was this fund, I was stunned when I learned this, but what used to happen is at the end of the fiscal year, what would happen is the city would pay back restricted funds that it borrowed the year before. At the very last day of the fiscal year, so June 30th, July 1, guess what happened? They borrowed that money back. So it was just a shell game. So and what they were doing is it's just like using one credit card to pay off another credit card. And that's what was happening is the city was just going further and further and further down the hole. And so we got to stop that. Now the plan, if we contract out refuse, we would get a one-time. This is based on some of the proposals we've received. We'd get a one-time cash infusion of $5 million. And then in addition to that...
Which is a drop in the bucket.
In addition, okay, let me finish. And then in addition, we would get $2.8 million annual franchise fee, which is more than what we're earning today. And the reason why is because you have the added efficiencies of what we call economies of scale. When you contract with a big company, such as Vertec, what they're able to do is they're able to buy 100, 200 trucks at one time, as opposed to the city that can barely afford to keep its fleet of 50 or so trucks alive. And you do save money on maintenance. You do save money on parts. You're able to buy in bulk. You're able to streamline your fleet. And so when you go to other cities, that's where the cost savings is coming from these efficiencies that you gather because you're operating on a much larger scale. Now, is there profit motive? Absolutely, there's profit motive. So the challenge is to make sure that these contracts that we enter into continue to provide a level of service that is equal to, if not better. We can actually provide better levels of service than we provide today because we can do it at an economy of scale that we can't achieve today as a city-run and owned operation.
Define better.
Well,
Better trucks, more personnel, paying no overtime, paying no sick leave, paying no vacation.
well, no, they have to pay.
Yeah, and
sick leave,
raises. Raises.
Not for
July
the
1st.
employees, for the public.
Raises, you're right, you're right. You
We
can-
don't want them to raise our trash.
No, that's it.
They can do that,
They
Yep.
do.
Yeah.
okay? We don't want that.
Well, and that's written in the contract, so it'd be a 10-year contract. Basically, there would be no increase in fees, so the residents would see no change.
For how
in-
long?
10 years.
Okay.
10 years. So 10 years, that's the agreement that has been put to these companies to bid on. That they get no increase. Basically, we continue to pay what we pay today. And then they would provide that service at a level and pay the city more money than we get today from the current collection that comes out of the trash. So they would actually, because they're able to provide the service much more efficiently, cost effectively than we can, because they have the economies of scale, they can afford to pay us the $2.8 million, in addition to paying us $5 million to have the privilege of providing the service in our city. Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. It's wonderful hearing different knowledge issues. But realistically, the way I'm seeing it, at the end of the day, we have to put something forward. This is what you're telling us we're putting forward as kind of the introduction to what we're going to do, since the details of companies are not listed in in this document. But from really early on, one thing that he noted was perception. That's something I think, first and foremost, we need to tackle. This perception that because we are changing our system, we are reducing our efficiency to handle problems. Now, whether or not that is true, and we will not know until something gets implemented, if it actually more chaos comes out of it or not. First and foremost, we need to be coming up with plans to change that perception. That is true. People who do crimes can see all of these things in the media. If it's saying that San Bernardino, like a few years back, arm yourself, we don't have enough police officers to protect yourself. Whether or not that was true, which areas that was true, it created a state of panic that we do need to prevent. So one thing I liked that you said was outlining the difference that because we are moving to another system, does not mean there's a reduction in officers. This might need more, depending and we have to outline that. This just means that we're having new people managing the system. A lot of people don't have a lot of faith in the city, so maybe there's a way we can actually use that to give a positive perception. The people that you don't trust to keep our streets safe, they're not the ones always going to be in leadership anymore. Now there's someone else. There is some federal, And I think there's something we need to do about that to tackle that perception, first and foremost, because that can help reduce some of the crime and instability so that we don't get into that situation. Second, so I would like to hear who's going to be who's going to be in charge of managing how the public understands this. Because, you guys are very knowledgeable. You come out to a lot of these meetings. I'm only 23, and tackling and understanding this type of information is really difficult. So a lot of times fear comes out because we don't understand who are the companies taking over, what is their resume per se. I think as soon as you guys start selecting people to contract, it's going to be really important that you guys not only say they have 50 years of experience, but yes, you have to showcase some example cities. You need to provide pictures, links, make it easy to digest. This is not easy to digest. You're not going to get your voters this way. The youth vote, I know I don't have the most faith in the way things are currently done because I can't get a job. And I know so many people my friends are trained to become firefighters and they are looking to other cities because they can't get a job here in San Bernardino. So what is that going to look like? Are the contractors going to, look to hiring within the city? That would be great. Putting that out there, first and foremost, is really going to help because I notice a lot of people of my parents' generation, are still working, and I love that because I need my parents' money to support me. But with that being said, we will stay in the city if we see there's options. I want to work here, and I know my friends who are training as firefighters want to work here. So if we can find a way to make sure the contract is going to give jobs to maybe first and foremost people who are training and that's great. And then putting that on the pamphlets. Whether or not I know if this will work, I know we don't necessarily have a lot of leeway on what to do at this point, but you are going to have to work harder on making it not only transparent in the sense that there's a beautiful packet with lots of words. It needs to be broken down with concrete examples. Someone who's willing to stand behind it, say this is the city that was in a similar situation of us. They have it contracted out. Yes, there are some shortcomings because in 10 years we do not know where the rates will lie. That means that we need to be very vigilant on how it's working during this 10 years and make sure that people are staying on top to maintain a close model to what happens in that 10 years after the 10-year time. We don't have much choice, but it will be safe. And if anything, we might need to open. I like what you said, the sense that right now we have 2 places closed down to firefighters. I'm not getting good response time if something happens. We need to make sure those are opened up and there is room for growth. And I do think that there will be room for growth in San Bernardino. I mean, Generation Now is all about that. We really do believe there are options, but we can't get into the job because so many people are already locked in because of pensions.
You make some excellent points, and you make a great spokesperson for the city, by the way. So if you do need a job down the road, then let's talk, because I think that you hit on a lot of things.
Before you go to someone else real quick,
Yeah,
just
sure.
because it's
Real
kind of
quick.
hard to get. One of the ways I think you can get your voters, like the voter turnout, is I think that you need to. A lot of us students in my generation, especially in Cal State, we look at through research. That's how we understand and delve into these type of things. If you can start working on collaborating with the Cal State to make some kind of like a course open to the public, that's going to break down what's been happening and give them a feeling that they can learn what's happening. It's really intimidating to come to these type of meetings when you don't know anything. I know you guys know a lot, but we need to go further out. So I think your transparency issue, that will be what gets your voters. And I don't think there's much point in arguing, but we don't have a choice in this. You have to kind of do it.
Thank you, and I'm going to respond to a couple of your points, but I want to go. I know Hank, you had your hand up for about 20 minutes.
Food out of the room.
What's that?
I'll get food out of the room.
Go ahead. No, it's all right.
Well, there's a really intelligent guy in New Orleans. He says, let's don't get stuck on stupid. First of all, the majority firemen don't live in the secret unit. Number 2, these are prima donnas. They fight for that job. Nobody asked them to be there. They work hard to get there, and then they do the darndest to get in. A fireman can go to a firefight and back off until it's handled. A policeman goes to a firefight. He's got to stay in it, live or die. But a fireman doesn't. And yet the fireman goes around saying, I'm a prima donna. I fought your fire. Hey, I've had the firemen not show up at 2 of my fires at my house. All I saw was taillights. They were too busy. Or they didn't have water 300 feet away. I argued for the chief to come up and argue for a hydrant. He came up and said, it's only 400 feet. We got plenty of hose. I said, well, next time you show up, because of Cal Fire, county fire, they wouldn't fight my fire because it's too far away. The chief of San Bernardino wouldn't go to bat to get a hydrant up there. No, the firemen, hey, what is it? We're not short firemen. 46 firemen and 5 vehicles showed up to that fire on D Street for the apartment fire. Over on Orange Street, they had 5 vehicles and 42 firemen and 2 chiefs show up to a little 10-foot by 10-foot garage fire. That was it. And yet the write-ups, it's a PR show. The write-ups, oh, we saved $300,000 in value. Property lost $10,000. Well, that was overvalued on a little wooden garage or a Model A with a fitting. They're not a shortage of firemen. We're showing up in huge numbers at these fires. Where are they coming from if we're short? We need to support the PD, contract out the fire, save some money, because those prima donnas, they're not earning their wage. They're sending out gobs of guys to fight a tiny fire. I fought my house fire by myself, in my own fire truck. My family came up there, broke through police lines to help. That's our fire department. I'm so sick and tired of this.
This
Let
raised
me
property to
respond
enhance
real
it.
quickly to a
Fund the
few
cost.
items. I totally, I agree with you on the communication. And we supposedly hired somebody to handle communication, and one of my frustrations is I've been putting a lot of this information out on my website because the city has not been, I think, as forthcoming in terms of really ensuring that the community understands what's at stake, what are the nuances in terms of what we're dealing with. And I think you have a right to know. And so I'm going to make a point tomorrow that I expect that new person that we hired, and we're supposedly paying quite a bit of money for, to be our communications manager. They should be front and center on this and out in the community and helping explain what's going on here. The other concern I have, this came out late Thursday. The city's closed on Friday. Nobody's around over Saturday and Sunday, and we're supposed to vote on this on Monday. To me, that's a recipe for disaster in terms of people saying, what's going on here? The council, I'll be honest, we got a look at the draft of this a couple weeks ago. I'm still going through it. Some of the numbers have changed, not significantly, but some of them have changed, and I'm not comfortable at this point tomorrow feeling that I'm fully ready to cast a vote.
But your back's against the wall.
Well, not necessarily. We have until the 30th of May. And, you know, for every ordinance that comes to the council, we have a first and second reading. I think it's only appropriate that we as the council, now the city manager's been working on this, the mayor's been working on this, the bankruptcy team's working on this. We as the council, we're sort of on the outside. And so, but we're the ones that have to cast the vote. And so my perspective is, I don't think it would be inappropriate to request that we look at perhaps continuing the vote, maybe to next week.
There's a meeting scheduled on the 27th.
That's what I'm thinking, and I'd like to get your input. This is something that's been brought to my attention. I actually had a state legislator call me and would make this request. That, you know, they just got this on Thursday too. Here's the rub. Now this is a major game changer in the state. We will essentially be the first major city in the state to transition from a city-owned operated fire department to a contracted fire department. I think there are some good rational arguments to do that, but needless to say, it's a major change statewide. So this isn't just affecting the city of San Bernardino. This decision will have a ripple effect, potentially, across the state. There are other cities that are desperately trying to figure out how they continue to provide the service and pay what ends up being 20, 30, 40% above what the market is now saying they can provide this service for, and they already are. They're providing it to federal agencies, they're providing it in other states, to other localities, and California is sort of the odd one out. So it has a major ripple effect potentially across the state. So I think it, in keeping with doing our due diligence, I don't necessarily think it would be inappropriate to say, let's give it a little bit more time. So you as the public, I mean, here we have a 100+ page document, you know, that we just threw at you on Thursday. And oh, by the way, we're leaving the office for the weekend, so happy reading. And, you know, I think our communications person should be engaged and responding to public inquiry and input. And I think we need a little bit more time to digest this and provide some input. And do I think that it's going to necessarily drastically change over the next week? Probably not. But I think that perception you allude to, the idea that here we're rushing into a vote when in theory we still have more or less 2 weeks. I think it's only appropriate and reasonable that we we give consideration to the residents now,
Thank you.
the employees of the city.
The stakeholders.
The stakeholders, to look at this thing and say, because the last thing I want to do is cast a vote, come, as you say, Judge Jury could throw it out. Will she? I don't think she would, but she could. Or have other criticisms of this plan that weren't, thoroughly vetted. I think giving another week probably isn't a bad idea. But will it change? I don't think a lot could change, but I'm open to alternatives if people think there are alternatives.
I just want to go back to.
Oh, by the way, there's pizza. Please help
Yeah.
yourself.
I just want to go back to the economies of scale as far as purchasing the vehicle. It's something that this city has not done in recent years, but can do, and they should do, is what's called piggybacking off of POs. And you can get an incredible cost savings when you do that, okay? And you say not many agencies around are doing their own refuse. Redlands does it. Ontario does it. LA does it. LA is a huge operation. Okay? You can piggyback off of their purchase orders to receive vehicles at the same cost that they are doing. There's no reason why this city can't do that to actually get potential savings on it.
Henry,
Yeah.
I have two close friends who are with the sheriff's department. They're deputies. They're paid nothing, but yet they contribute. They are sworn officers, carry a gun, and arrest. They're reserve type individuals. One of them tells an interesting story, and I'll share it with you. They were chasing a bad guy. Now, my friend is 69 years old, and they were foot chasing this guy, and he was leading the pack. And he looks around, and here's all these paid deputies, younger, behind him. And he says, "What's wrong with this picture?" Because he was leading the pack. But the moral of the story is, if the fire department, if the sheriff's department can have reserve resources, unpaid, why can't the fire department? Why can't the fire department have reserve firemen on an on-call basis?
Paid call.
What?
Paid call.
Well, I was just going to say, Big Bear has firemen on pay per call that they have to respond in an X amount of time. There are opportunities out there that haven't been explored or haven't been tabled for the community to look at that might be some solution to helping the fire department staff command itself where there are no strings attached. They're not paid salaries, benefits, retirements. They're there because of, like many of us, our services are free to the city.
Well, like I was saying, there are many smaller towns that have completely volunteer fire departments. The whole fire department is volunteer. So it's not unusual. It is unusual for a city our size to rely on that type of a model.
But you can augment it.
Right, and there might be some options. It's something that I'm happy to explore, and I think this is the reason why I think, giving a little bit more time, not a lot more time, but I think a little more time to explore a couple more items that I think